This is the Player to Pro podcast, where every pitch of every game matters and where players, parents, and coaches come together to win both on and off the field.
All right, we have Alan Zinter on the show today, and you guys are in for a treat. It's my pleasure to have him on the show. Alan Zinter is the Major League hitting coach for the Cincinnati Reds. Alan, welcome to this show.
Rosie, I love it, man. Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing, and it's an honor to be here, to be able to talk with you today and talk to some kids and some coaches and whoever's listening. This is great stuff. So thanks for having me, Rosie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're definitely going to benefit a lot from what you're going to say, because I know I did when I was with you.
About that. We learned. We always learn together. Come on, man.
Well, it's neat you said that, because the first time you called me, it was in 2016, because that's when I played for the Padres. That's when you were my hitting coach at the Padres. But I got a phone call from you, and the first thing you told me, you said, "Hey, I can't wait to learn from you." And I'm like, "What? Can't wait to hear from like you're the hitting coach." So, but I thought that was really neat to just know that you were that receptive and that like willing and looking forward to learning from the players. I think that nothing but respect for that. But
yeah, I think it's just important. I've as I've come up as a player and started to, people telling me that, hey, you might be a good coach. You like to coach. You want to stay in the game. And as I started to really dwell on that, because as a player, you never think about being a coach, and you probably can understand it. And then all of a sudden, you become the old guy, and it's like, if you're fortunate enough, you become the old guy. And you don't know how you did that, and you start, wanting to stay in the game. So you start watching and really looking at coaches. And the one thing I noticed is that every coach that I adored made me feel really, really special, but also felt a genuine sense of that they were continuously learning and they never had anything figured out. And it was real. I don't think anybody has this game figured out or life figured out. And when you can walk through the journey with somebody that is real, that has experience to share, but also is willing to learn more from the player or from whoever they're with, that makes it all better. So I learned at a really early age that I never want to stop learning, and I don't know everything.
Yeah, and I felt that humility from you right away. And as a player, it makes us more absorbent to want to hear what you have to say, and it's a trust, right, that you build. Right. Even though I know the experience that you had, I know you were number 1 draft pick, right? Back, what was that, like 2002?
Yeah, last century. So it's like weird. So don't even worry about that.
No, but like where you come from, you have the on-field experience. And me, I'm just a little punk coming into the San Diego Padres organization, and just the mutual respect that we had and the trust that we have was really cool right off the bat. But it's interesting you say like you learn like that growth mindset, because I'm actually working with Lyle Overbay's high school team remotely right now. He's the head coach.
Oh, cool.
I have this online hitting course right now, and I just kind of go through it with Lyle and his team. And Lyle Overbay is a great hitter, and he's like, Rose, I never thought about it that way. And he's like, man, that's why you were such a great hitter. I'm like, Lyle, first of all, I was not that good of a hitter, but it's like his growth mindset. That's the point I want to make. But a guy like that who's coaching now in high school, he's still learning, and it's just amazing to me. And just likewise with your personality as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, those are the really cool stories that you start to really understand that more people are like that than not. Especially players that were really, really successful for a long period of time. They did it in such a way inside their head and inside their brain, it worked a certain way for them, but everybody's different. And so it's really cool for these guys that have this growth mindset to learn and hear 100, 200, 1,000 different ways on how players were successful. And now they have more bullets on their belt, more weapons to use when they're going to teach more players. Because it's really hard if you're just going to cookie cut everybody into what one person thought. That doesn't happen that way. So it's really cool when a a successful hitter, and there's a lot of them like that I've been able to coach as a coordinator, that they come in, I'm like, dude, you were an amazing major league hitter, and now you're really asking all these questions. But it's really nice to hear the genuine sincerity of them wanting to, like, give me some information that I can use. This is how I thought about it, but I want to help. I want to understand it. A lot of guys just are finally understanding, without the pressure of trying to produce, understanding what they did, and now they want to share it. So it's cool.
Yeah, that is. There's no question. I know for us, I was a completely different hitter than probably anybody you saw. A little bit different, at least. And I struggled that first half in San Diego. I was I think I was hitting $180 in June. And I'm sure they were talking about sending me back down to AAA. I mean, I was thinking about sending myself back down to AAA, like, because it was pretty embarrassing. But you came up with the ideas and helped understand who I was and what I needed to get done in the cage, and what routine I needed that would really enhance my game. And that was more like playing games in the cage.
Right.
We started having fun, right? We started playing the 4-seam, 2-seam game, or hitting the ball off the back net, or hitting the ball off the tee that was like 20 feet in front of us. And I know I appreciated that. You understood who I was, what I needed, and that just speaks volumes of what kind of coach you are. So I obviously appreciate that. But
yeah, I mean, those, it's really important that, like I said, and we all know that every player is different. And it was important, it's important to me to connect with each of my players, and it's almost impossible to connect 100% with all of them the way you want it on your timetable. So, everybody, no matter who you are, how good you are, how big your contract, everybody in a season is going to struggle at some point. And, for you, like, getting to know you right away, having a really cool connection immediately, we were able to just feel comfortable with each other, just not even talking about baseball, just talking about life. And getting to know you, I can sense your personality. And so routines are huge. Like routines, like the best, most consistent hitters in the game have the best routines. Now, I'm not saying they do certain drills. It's just that they are consistent with who they are in what they do, and it becomes a routine, and they believe in that routine, and it prepares them mentally and physically, regardless of the results. So they can almost trust a routine when their career depends upon results, right? So it's really cool. So for you, when you were starting to get glossy-eyed and kind of thinking too much and focusing and putting too much pressure and trying to impress probably a new organization, wanting to finally get your niche in the big leagues and produce, you can sense that, and it's so genuine and real. So, I mean, it was you. I listened to you. And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do as a coach, is to listen to the player, like actually hear him and appreciate what he thinks, appreciate how he was taught, appreciate where he's coming from, and appreciate the moment that this kid and what he's thinking about right now. So for you, trying to get out of a little funk, I don't know. I mean, you say that I helped you create. You were involved in creating this because it was your personality. I know that you like competition. You're coming off the bench most of the time for the Padres. So let's compete and start having fun. And so listening to some of the drills that you used to do, we just put a little spin on it. And we ended up having like 4, 5, 6 drills, that were just fun, high energy drills that you got your focus going, your senses were heightened. You were now engaged in winning the drill rather than trying to take a perfect swing, because we got past that point with you, and man, then you took off, and it was fun to see the consistency of those drills preparing you during the day to help you relax and compete in the game and not be having to be so perfect.
Right. No, that's exactly what happened. And I think it goes back. I talked to Rob Brantley last week. We're talking about adaptability. He had his routine. He's on his routine right now. I mean, he's catching. Hopefully, he gets to play in the big leagues this year. Back in a Buster Posey. but he was talking about adaptability in his routine, what he eats, how he sleeps, how his workout routine, how his hitting routine is. But the main thing is how you adapt to all these different routines. And I think that's what we did, Z, in San Diego. I feel like I was pretty headstrong in the fact that I was trying to get my reps in, and I want to be prepared for the game. But I needed I needed the more competitive drills to do. And that's how I adapted in the middle
Right.
of the season, is I was able to adapt from just get my 8 reps off the tee, 8 reps off front toss. No, I had to make a bigger adjustment than that in a positive light that fit my personality and who I was.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's got to fit the kid's personality. Obviously, kids are trial and error with certain drills, or they learn a drill from a certain player. They're watching, some of the drills, they're not the best drills for that particular person.
Right.
So you got to really be careful. But as a kid, try everything and see, but then get to a point where you start to understand as you mature. And it's hard because it's still, even professional players are still in search mode of a really good routine. And sometimes it takes failure. Sometimes it takes a lot of just trial and error to find some stuff. And you don't have to find a routine where you have to stick to that certain drill and you have to do 10 each drill. It's like the ability to adapt to, I'm gonna do this drill today. Well, if it's raining, then I can do this drill. I don't have to do everything. So you don't have to finish the routine to be successful. It's more of a mindset to prepare you to compete, and allowing yourself some room for error, but then not being, what I try to teach you guys is don't be superstitious in setting your routines. Like, well, I did this drill and I got 2 hits, so I got to do it again. Like, now you're becoming a crutch, right? And players do that. They fall into, well, try this at 1:00 in the afternoon, and it works. They do really good. It's really good for the player, but then they go 0 for 4, and they're like, no, man, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, they
And
jump
so
ship.
they jump ship and they become superstitious. The best hitters in the world are not. I say the best hitters in the world aren't superstitious, but they do things just in case. That's how I lived my life. I wasn't superstitious, but I did things just in case. So I gave myself an out. There's a lot of superstitions, but I don't want that to be inside a hitter's head. I want them to be more accountable to that, and more belief and trust in who you are as a player and hitter.
Yeah, and that's what I love the word accountability. I feel like that comes up a lot when I talk to young players and these young coaches who are coaching these young players, is that you have to learn how to hold yourself accountable, with sticking to your routine, but being able to make adjustments and knowing what you need to get done, or what, as a coach, what your players need, not necessarily what you think they need. But accountability is really important to me.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's a big step. Accountability is a big step in the maturity of a player, and it comes at all different times in a player's career or a kid's career. And it's sad to say that most of them don't ever get there. It seems like if they don't get to a higher level, and that's part of the reason why maybe they're not playing anymore, because they didn't have accountability in their actions. And it's almost a freedom. I've seen so many young kids get to the point where they actually make that decision, and it's a decision for the young kid or the player to take accountability, and it's hard but it's freedom. Once you take accountability, it's freedom from the failures and the worrying about baseball, because now it's like, yeah, I went 0 for 4 today. I went 0 for 4. So just in my experiences, having to call my dad back in the day, before we had social media or radio, the games in the minor leagues, I had to call my dad every single day. And when I'm struggling, and I struggle mightily, I didn't want to call my dad. So I ended up justifying my failures, and becoming, saying things like, well, the backdrop, I couldn't see, no one could see today, or we only got 2 hits as a team, or we faced a really good pitcher, or the umpire sucked today. I can't, I had a great BP, it's coming. And, my dad's like, well, what's going on? What's going on? So I justified my failures, and I never took accountability for I was struggling, and don't worry about it. So I can't remember who helped me with that, but it took me a long time. But once I said, you know what, I'm making the decision, I went over 4 and I'm not going to give any more explanations or excuses. So I used to give excuses or explanation. I was always trying to explain myself. And once I just said, you know what, I went over 4 with 3 Ks. Tomorrow's a new day. It became freedom. And it was a weird thing because all this pressure was lifted off my shoulders. And I ended up starting to have fun again. And now I just said, baseball failure, that's part of the game. So if I was 3 for 20, it was part of the game. And I got out of it much quicker than I was when I was justifying everything and struggling.
Well, that's just a cognitive maturity, though, and I think that's the toughest thing about baseball players. Like young baseball players especially, they don't get to that point, whether because they're not physically developed or there's a lot of things going against them. The field gets too big, the bats they're using are too heavy. They don't have a chance to get to that point to understand,
Right.
like, to be cognitively mature. But so my question to you is, if they're not that mature to hold themselves accountable, how can coaches make sure they hold their players accountable at different degrees?
Yeah, that's hard. If the coach doesn't have a structure or is prepared for a conversation about this, and it just waits till it comes to a head and the kid's mad and he's giving excuses and it's never addressed, obviously now the kid might never get to the point where he can mature on his own.
Right?
But I think a coach, that really cares. Like, a hitting coach is a life coach. It's not just a swing coach. Like, we have to, you can have the perfect swing, but that doesn't mean you can hit at the highest level. So you have to be able to. There's a mental side of it. There's a physical side. There's the approach side. There's so many things that go on into a hitter, but the most important thing is walking with the kid through the journey and helping him take accountability. So if you start to, and I like to present it to the earliest kids, like for us, it's at the Dominican level, 16-year-old Latin players, and try to start to teach them. And I do it really simple, like an old school board game. I'll take out a board game and I'll pretend this is a game of baseball. So we got the board game. I open it up and we got, what's this? Oh, this is our doubles. Oh, that's cool. This is slugging percentage. Oh, this is a strikeout. Oh, what this? Oh shit! This is 70% failure, because this is a really good hitter, right? So I want them to understand that failure is inside the game of baseball that you have to play with, and you can't get rid of it. So I always try to teach them, once you sign a professional contract, you signed your soul to 70% failure if you're good. So you're already at 70%, so you might as well embrace it and love it and start to understand how to use it rather than try to get rid of it. Like, most kids don't even want to think about it. Everybody's working in the off season to be perfect and to have a great year, but they haven't prepared the mind to fail. They haven't prepared the mind to, what are you going to do when you fail? Because it's going to happen. And they're all of a sudden they're caught off guard, and now it becomes a reaction rather than a choice. So if you're prepared with all this stuff and you're educated and you can educate the kid, and it's going to take different links with different kids because of the personalities. But if you can start to be consistent with the message of learning to embrace failure, that it's a part of the game, it takes time. So an example is Paul Goldschmidt. I had when he was, for 3 years on the minor leagues with the Diamondbacks. He's one of the most level-headed guys in the game today. But you know what? Paul Goldschmidt used to have a short fuse back in the day in Bakersfield, and he was really not having it. And so, there was a couple times that, we had to talk through it, and it took him a few times, but obviously he's off the charts, but he got to that point quicker than most guys. And now even when he struggles at the big league level, it's not a big deal. It's just part of the game. And it helps him get through this, gives him that baseball freedom. So it's just, I think coaches have to be prepared to have these conversations. They're not easy because it takes a lot of time. But I think that's on the battlefield, that's what's most important. So there's time to prepare swings and all that stuff, but you can't just work on swing mechanics in the off season, swing mechanics in spring training, swing mechanics at practice, and then swing mechanics during the game. That doesn't work that way. So I think a really good coaches are prepared to handle and work with the kid's mindset and walk with him in this journey on helping him stay on that little beam of embracing failure.
That's, man, my goodness. And I was talking about Paul Goldschmidt. That's my favorite teammate of all time, just the way he went about his business. And I didn't know that. For me, as his teammate, I never knew he had his Bakersfield experiences. For me, I'm always thinking that he's even keel, but no, he had that maturity too, right? It takes a
Yeah.
while to get there for a guy like that. But yeah, I just love everything you're saying, Z. And I know a lot of these young coaches will appreciate that, but it's the preparation though, to understand like you're gonna have to fail, but there's not enough time in a day, I feel like, for these coaches to hit every one of their players, especially young, or coaches that have young players. Like, how do you like put the time in and actually educate these players? You have at least 11 to 12 different players, and there's other things you got to worry about, especially in, like, I'm going to go back down to like travel ball, club ball. You have to worry about making sure you have a field to play on. Like, are you really concerned about uh, the kids, preparing for failure, or holding them accountable? Like, there's other things you're worrying about.
Right. I mean, I think there's a scale, it's like a sliding scale. When you're really, really young, you work really, really hard on honing mechanics and watching. I think you need to really observe when they're really, really young, just observe. But it's how you interact with the player. You have to build that trust, that connection, so that when you do notice something, it's not weird going up to the kid and talking to him about it, and that he will open
Right.
up to you. So it's almost like you don't have to do it every single day, but if you're watching and observing how a kid responds and acts, rather than just in tune to the game and not really paying attention to anything else but mechanics or the game, but are you really watching how the kid goes back to the bench and interacts with his teammates after he pops up? Are you watching that? If he goes and he's pouting and by the cooler and he does it a few times, maybe that's when after the game you just talk to him a little bit and you share something with him, or you give him a pat on the back and challenge him to try to be prepared for that next time, because it's never going to go away. Like, kids, we think that we're going to get oh, I feel good now and I don't have to think anymore, I don't have to worry about it. Like, no, I mean, you might suck the next day. And so, like, baseball players have a master's. If you've played long enough, you have a master's in failure. And so now it's like you've gone through that. Like, there was somebody that said, you're gonna suck. You just want to suck less than everybody else. So it's tough, and I think it's just, I don't think it's thought about or talked about enough, because we're trying to be so perfect in an imperfect game, and we're never prepared. The majority is not prepared to handle all that. So I've kind of flipped it on the thing and telling this kid, I'm sorry, but you're going to go through some tough times. And we kind of just say, but there's no need to panic, kind of give him some strategies to go through this and help him along his way, so that when it does happen, hey, you're just going through one of these moments,
Yeah.
now it's your choice. It's your choice how you choose to handle this. Are you just going to not think about it and just react to the situation? Because most of the time it's you're going to react negatively. But if you know that, well, this just happened, well, now I got to choose it. And once you know it's a choice, now it's your fault, right? Now it's your fault if you don't do it. So, but it takes time and takes a long time, and you have to have patience. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I heard from Ronnie Ortegon. I'm not sure if you know Ronnie,
Yeah,
but
good
he's
guy.
my hitting fantastic guy. But he says we're in the business of building up, right? We're in the business of building up and teaching these like you said, you got to listen to these players. But I actually got to work with him and his teams on, like, remotely, like on Zoom, and they were hitting off teasers, about 10 or 12 of them on the Zoom. And at first, I'm looking at these players and I'm like, oh, you're definitely not driving your back knee. You're definitely off balance. You're definitely doing this wrong and this wrong. And I'm hearing Ronnie. Ronnie's like, hey, very nice. Way to stay through the zone. Way to hold your finish. Way to do all the great things, right? And then he would pull a kid aside and say, hey, just make sure you drive your back knee. All right, let me see it. Like, it's how that relationship, you have to build that trust with them, like you said, by giving them positive reinforcement. Let them know what they're doing right. Like build them up so that they trust you and that you can have that when the time comes to it. Like, hey, I see you kind of upset by the water fountain, whatever, or by the water jug. Don't you think you should approach it a little bit different? They'll be a lot more absorbent and receptive, right? If you've already built that relationship with them.
100%. And this is for young coaches and first-time coaches that are trying to make an impact in the game, because now it's not about you anymore going to the park and your time. So your whole thing is now for you, being fortunate to be in professional baseball. And if we can get back going someday soon, that would be awesome. But your time management at the field is going to be 100% different, rather than you're so used to going for so many years to the field and getting prepared in your mind and doing what you need to do. Now you got to prepare for, a whole team or 12 guys. And it's like, it's really strange. But what Ronnie Ortegon did, and you saw, I'm glad you were able to pick that up, because, as a player, when a coach or coaches come in, you can tell. I mean, you can't hide it from players. They can tell when you're real or you're looking to fix. And when a coach comes in and he's a problem solver, and and I'm not saying anything. There's a lot of young coaches coming in that are really, really good with the knowledge of the swing. Especially now with all the technologies and the certifications and all that stuff. But I'm sorry to say that you can have 1,000 certifications, but you still might not be a good teacher. You might have a lot of knowledge, but if you feel and you walk in and you make a kid feel that you're a problem solver, now the kid's in there swinging, knowing that you're trying to fix him on everything he does wrong. But when you go in there and you walk in like Ronnie Ortegon and just say, hey, nice job, or you pick out something good, hey, I love your focus today. But you know that this kid is struggling with something, you pull him aside and not embarrass him in front of everybody, and you talk to him, hey, I love this. I'm going to challenge you to do this a little bit more. Maybe it's you see that this kid is struggling with something, but you still make him feel like he's worthy of praise and he's doing something right. This game is way too hard to come in there and make a kid feel like, you're a problem solver and that you're trying to pick apart his swing, or just because you hit a ball, you're like, I don't think he likes that. I don't think he likes that, because he's always saying, I got to have more rotational acceleration. He's dropping all these words on me, and the kid doesn't understand that. So, as a player, you can remember, and that's why the coaches that you liked made you feel good first. Then they helped you.
Yeah. And I think that's how, I think we answered the question, that's how a coach holds himself accountable. He's in the business of building up the player and really getting to understand and really providing them with positive feedback, more than trying to break them down to build them back up. There's a time and a place for that as well, right? I always enjoy that when a coach got into me, broke me down, spent that extra hour in the cage, and me just taking reps at the reps, and him helping me work on one mechanic. But there's a time and place for that. Majority of the time, it needs to be that positive reinforcement, that life coach, like you said. I think that's how even young coaches can hold themselves accountable. And I've talked to a lot of young travel ball teams, club ball teams, college coaches that do that. And I like hearing that, but I just don't know how many coaches do that.
Yeah,
kids deserve it,
The kids deserve it. I don't know. Coaches, we can't forget how hard this game is, and it's not going to get easier. I mean, it just keeps getting tougher and tougher with how pitchers are throwing harder. So it's harder. This game is harder. So we have to really keep things simple. And, I try to pride myself in taking the complicated, being open-minded to all this new, verbiage and technology and learning that. But still, if you're going to take that to the player, it's got to be interpreted and translated into something simple. So I pride myself in taking the complicated and making it very, very simple. Simple is not easy. Simple is understanding, but it's still not easy. So it's impossible to make something easy. You can make it simple where the kid can understand and trust you, but then you got to work like heck because it's not easy.